I call this open hearing of the Hatfield Historical Commission to order. For those of you who don't know me, I'm George Ashley. I'm the chairman of the Historical Commission, and I'm also a member of the Historical Society, and probably some of you know me better as the curator of the Farm Museum down behind the library. And I'm going to ask all the other members of the commission present just to introduce themselves.
Okay, my name is Les LaBarge. I live at 55 Elm Street, Hatfield. I'm a member of the Hatfield Historical Society, a member of the Hatfield Historical Commission, and I represent the Hatfield Historical Commission with the CPA. Thank you.
Amy Hahn, 19 School Street. I am on the Historical Commission and a member of the Historical Society.
Charlie Kellogg, 58 Linseed Road. I'm a member of the commission, director, and a member of the society.
And at the end of the table, we have Kiino here sitting in, who is the secretary, as probably most of you know, in the office on the left as you enter the town hall. And she's going to be acting as clerk tonight so that we have a record of what's going on. Also, we're being video recorded. I don't know, is this ultimately going to go out on the Channel 15?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And YouTube.
Okay. YouTube. Okay.
These stars.
It'd be interesting. Well, only when we get into that. Before we do anything having to do with the open hearing, I just want to read one thing that I would read if we were having a regular meeting of the Historical Commission. It's just a notice from the Planning Board, just to inform other members of the Commission. This is a meeting notice from the Planning Board. A meeting will be held by the Hatfield Planning Board in Memorial Town Hall on July 15th, 2015 at 8 p.m. on an application filed by Robert Raymond for the premises at 10 West Street, Hatfield. That's for those rest of you, that means Route 5. And gives a location of that on the assessor's map. Owned by Northampton Boys 4 LLC, 432 Grassy Brook Road, Brookline, Vermont, for the purpose of infill of buildings as indicated in areas A, B, C, and amusement use in Area B in accordance with Section 3.0 Use Regulations, subsection 4.22, amusement or recreation service, including batting cages, miniature golf, and related activities, not including golf courses, and 5.15, warehouse and storage set forth by zoning bylaws. A complete application is available in the town clerk's office. So you don't all have to rush out right away to that meeting, because that isn't until July 15th. I just want to explain a little bit about what we're going to be doing here tonight so you know what to expect and know what the procedure is, and also to clarify what's going on, because the article in the Gazette last week was not entirely accurate, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. A month ago, roughly, Associated Building Records filed an application for a demolition permit on the center school building across the street, and that was automatically referred to the Historical Commission because the building is over 100 years old, and it's required that that be referred to the Historical Commission under the town bylaws. We had a meeting about 3.5 weeks ago in which we discussed whether or not the building was historically significant. After discussing that, we voted unanimously that the building is historically significant, which requires us to hold an open hearing, which is going on tonight. One of the first things we're going to do in terms of the business tonight is I'm going to ask one of the members of the commission, it doesn't make any difference who wants to do it, to make a motion, and I'm just going to read the motion so that you know what will be the motion on the floor, so that we can then, well, what we will then do is invite any kind of discussion that anybody wants to make from the floor. We're here to listen to you, first of all. And then only after you've said what you have to say, members of the commission may have something to say or may not, and then we'll take a vote on the motion. And the motion will be, I move that the former center school be, in quotes, preferably preserved, close quotes, and that the building commissioner not issue a demolition permit for the center school until 1 year from this date in accordance with Hatfield bylaws, Article 13, Section 3. Okay? So the vote is basically to impose what's commonly called a demolition delay. And I'll ask anybody here who wants to, you want to do that? You want to technically make that?
Do I?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think it's necessary for you to read it. I think you've all just heard it.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you move that?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, and for the sake of key. I want to just have you hand that to me, and I'll hand it to Key so he has a copy of that, so in her record. Now, at this point, what I want to do is just open this up for any kind of comment from anybody who wants to make a comment, and I ask that we do this much as we do it in town meetings. I'll follow your lead, Joe, and allow people to come to the microphone, say your name and the street you live on, just so that people know where you're from in town. You don't have to give the street address, the number of the address, but just your name and the street, and say what you have to say, and we'll listen to what you have to say, okay? So, Joe.
And I apologize, I've got another meeting to be at 8 o'clock down in Hamp, so I have 2 minutes. I'm just listening to the will of the people. I come today speaking for the people of town meeting that have voted already too many times to dismantle this building. Over the past 35 years since its last debut as a school, it remained mostly vacant until the regional library rented it for a time, then again vacant. This building has been sitting there becoming more unsafe and slowly deteriorating each and every day, even though it was voted upon by the community to dismantle. There's been no maintenance due to our town's limited funds. Keep in mind that the will of the people in this town voted to keep the property in the town's ownership. That isn't the issue. It's very clear they want to keep the property as it's an asset to our town. The issue now is to wait another year for a possible proposal some might agree on, and then take more time to thoroughly examine another RFP and go through the whole process all over again. Then if it's decided to try again to sell the building, we'll need to vote on whether to negotiate if we're willing to give a tax break to the highest interested party. They certainly want to make money. After all, it's a business investment. We also need to decide just how this is going to fit into our town and the revenue it will bring in over the next few years to recoup the expense we've already spent on having it sit there for over 35 years. Just what is that expense we need to recoup? It's difficult to determine due to all the consultants, applications, and etc. Ask John Wilkes and his committee. They spent over a year already, only to have the vote no by the townspeople of their findings. However, of all that time and money spent on research needs to go into the sale price as well. What is that price? The offers we've received to date to purchase the building have been anywhere from $1 to $175,000. The townspeople were adamant that they didn't want to give it away. So now how much is enough? Should we decide to wait another year and hope for possible respectable offers to consider and then sell the building? What about parking? That's another issue we haven't even considered. Are we going to stipulate that type of restrictions the building is going to comply with, especially with limited parking? We already appreciate and utilize the existing parking for our fields. Do we tell those sports participants and families to park on the road, which will be another issue for the new residents? And then the noise of games in the evening. What has been considered and what remains the same every time we take it to a vote is this. The townspeople agree to dismantle the failing building with all its toxic materials and have it removed by the contractor already agreed upon, using monies already set aside in the town budget by their vote. The time frame originally set to dismantle was just after annual town meeting. Please don't wait any longer. Listen to the will of the people. Dismantle the building as voted by the town meeting process over and over again, clear the land, and at the very least convert it into a safe pathway to the river for all of our townspeople to enjoy and use as early as this year. If you think of historical preservation, just look at the river. This has been there longer than our town. Let's open it up for all to enjoy. It is no longer the polluted river we grew up with. It's clean and able to be enjoyed. The scenery is amazing. Let everyone share in it, not just the few that know how to get to it. Possibly name it the Center School Park. Since town meeting, I've received many emails and phone calls from many frustrated people that are so tired of going to more meetings when they have belief in the finality of annual town meeting decisions, that they refuse to come to more. So I invited and enclosed some of their comments for you to read through. Some I did not print due to the content or length, but I include a summation of their words that I used as a template in this letter. Lastly, my family has preserved much history over decades for museums, schools, collections, and more, including all of our town cemeteries. So yes, I do treasure historical preservation, but being so mindful of spending taxpayers' money and living up to the will of the people when they vote is paramount. Thank you.
Okay.
I have made a copy for each of you. There are 19 comments from different people that are attached, just paragraphs to read at some point. And thank you for listening.
Okay.
Really apologetic. I have a meeting
Actually,
to go
pass one to
so-
Key, too.
Well, thank you for coming, I appreciate it.
Okay, and we'll include that in the record of the meeting. So, anybody else want to speak? open this up to anybody who wants to. Yes.
Good evening. Christopher Smith, Prospect Street, a member of the Hatfield Redevelopment Authority. I'm going to read a statement or a letter that after last Friday we met. I put in your box, George, a copy of this letter that you can, 5 copies. Dear members of the Hatfield Historic Commission, the Hatfield Redevelopment Authority, HRA, held a special meeting on Friday, June 26th, 2015, to discuss several issues, the reuse of the center school being one. Although there were past attempts to both sell and lease the building over the past 10 years or so, since Western Mass Library left to move to Whately, the HRA was not a part of the process since its creation in 2007. It is worth noting that for those communities that have redevelopment authorities, such as Deerfield, Belchertown, Amherst, and numerous other towns, they have been utilized specifically for finding acceptable reuses of older municipal buildings. This is because a redevelopment authority is a quasi-governmental agency whose abilities includes both applying for government grants and working directly with private sector investment, and even in some cases acting as a developer themselves with town meeting approval. Please consider the following voted statement by the HRA in your deliberations to designate the center school as preferably preserved. The Hatfield Redevelopment Authority agrees with the finding of the Historical Commission that the center school building is historically significant under Article 13 of the Hatfield Town Bylaws. And in conformity with the United States Department of Interior standards, the HRA agrees to pursue the reuse of the building in the best public interest of the town in regards to preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, and reconstruction, and hereby asks the Hatfield Historical Commission to vote favorably for preferably preserved designation under town bylaw. Article 13 for the center school building at the close of this public hearing on July 1st, 2015. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak?
I'll speak.
Okay.
This is our town, and,
Name
oh, I'm
and-
sorry, my name is Danica Perry. I live on North Street.
Right.
I'm a homeowner. And when I moved to this town, we had streetlights, and those disappeared all of a sudden. And then we cut down the sycamore tree, and there are trees being cut down left and right. The face of this town is changing, and in an inappropriate way. And I just feel like taking this building down will forever change. I have a little girl that lives next door to me, and she was almost in tears today. We were talking about it, and she said, I walk by that building it's just like, it's part of our town. And there's no need. How many of us live with asbestos, lead paint, and bats in our attics? I mean, like, it's just ridiculous that we're gonna tear down this gorgeous building and change the face of Hatfield for whatever reason. You know what? Have people sign off and say, I'll live there, and agree to, like, you can make it a condo building, and the 4.1 million or whatever number I was given is just, give me a break. Fly people in from another place that'll do it for cheaper. I mean, like, it's just ridiculous. This building does not need to be torn down. It's part of the face of Hatfield, and there's been chatter about redoing the library. I mean, I understand like a little extension of the library, but like people live in this tiny little enclave of a beautiful, beautiful place, and for a reason. So to change everything about it is just absurd to me. So I'm here to just say, So
Anybody else? Yes.
Lynn OMalley, Depot Road. It's true, town meeting, the vote went demo. But if the fathers of our town listened to the town people 10 years ago, they would have sold it. We had bidders, we weren't gonna make $1 million, but the building over 10 years ago would have been preserved and would have cost the developers a lot less. But there are people out there that are willing to preserve Hatfield, not change the facade, keep the playing fields. We are in a historic district. This Milk Bottle School, torn down. Smith Academy, torn down. What's next? The library, town hall? We can outsource all our departments. We need to preserve who we truly are, and that's a historic district for people who want to support their community. We need to preserve our buildings, and we need to support what this community is. So I'm asking that the Historic Commission really think hard about what we want Hatfield to be, to become, and to stay as is, and that we preserve our community. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Nancy Merritt, and I live down on Lower Main Street in Hatfield, and I've been a real estate agent in the area for 23 years. And I totally agree with Danica that people want the small-time community of Hatfield to come to. It's got a certain charm. A lot of it has been lost, and I totally agree with you about that. With some of these decisions to make these changes that are going to bring Hatfield up into the 2000s. I remember 10 years ago, or whenever it was, that the Grand Dinicos wanted to take over the building, buy the building. I'm not sure what the particulars were. And I thought, that is terrific, because I lived through seeing the schools in Northampton on South Street condoized, and what a beautiful job they did with them. Back on the tax rolls, no cost to the city. Why this town would even consider spending a penny to do any work on that building when you've got somebody such as the Grand Dinicos who are willing to do the work is beyond me. I don't want my tax money going to tear down that building. I think we've got wonderful alternatives, and I think we should use them. Thank you.
Yes.
Mitch Gurjen. I grew up here. I don't know how many of you have. But anyway, I grew up here. I went to school in that building. And my children grew up here. They went to school in that building. And I told them about how we, or the town, was planning to tear it down. And they looked at me and they said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." "Why would they want to do that?" And I said, "Well, there's asbestos in the ceiling, in the roof, etc. And there are supposed to be all kinds of, dangerous construction things. We can't even go in the building anymore." And so my son said to me, "Mom, I don't understand why they would do that. They took down Smith Academy and they put in a park. And they have difficulty keeping the park up. And who uses the park?" He said, "What Hatfield is known for is its main street, the big trees, and Center School, and we used to have Old Smith Academy, and the town hall." He said, "You take down Center School, and all you have is the town hall. That's not much of a main street." And I agreed with him, which means he agreed with you. And I just wish that there was a way we could find to preserve it. It just seems to me that the town is more than the value of the land. We need to value the education that went on in that building. We need to value the history that went on in that building. I'm just, I get so upset about the whole thing. But, okay, one more thing. I read in the paper yesterday. This is about Hadley, and they were closing the town hall in Hadley for what? I forgot how long. But anyway, why? Asbestos. They were removing the asbestos from the floors. They're not demolishing the building. And that's a historical building, too. So, please. And if there's a committee to somehow support or research or do whatever, I'm willing to serve on that committee. Thank you.
She doesn't realize that she just made herself chairman of a committee, but that's, okay, come on up, yes, please.
So I'm Lisa Equis. I'm on North Street also. I moved here 33 years ago. I did not go to school in the center school, but I came to Hatfield for all the reasons that everyone here has shared so far. My house, which was the old Blighter place, which was the old Ryan place, I've probably spent more than what it would cost you to take the asbestos out of the center school. Okay, I did it because I love the homes here. I love the tradition, the age, the gravitas of this town. It's remarkable. And the pride that people take in their homes, their lawns, their businesses says something. I could have left a number of times. I love this town. And I want to see this school saved. I think it can be done, and I'm right on that committee with them. Thank you.
Mike Cahill, North Street. North Street is really well represented tonight. I don't know what's going on here. I don't think there's been any kind of agreement. I'd just like to speak just a minute to the issue of the will of the people, which was brought up by Joe LaValle. I'm not so sure that it's the will of the people of this community to demolish this building. There was a special town meeting that was held, I believe, last October, which was not well attended, maybe 100 or so people, who at that point voted to take the building down. Subsequently, they found out that when bids came in to demolish the building, there wasn't sufficient funds to afford the demolishing of the building. So at our annual town meeting, the Board of Selectmen decided that they would ask the community for an additional $75,000 to demolish the building. That particular vote required a 2/3 majority because they were asking the community to borrow in order to fund that $75,000. That vote failed. At annual town meeting, that failed. Obviously, there were more people there than at the special. And then, all of a sudden, after that vote had been taken, someone in the audience who was for demolishing the school decided that, well, perhaps we would ask for minority reconsideration of that article and amend it so that they would take money from free cash, the additional money from free cash as opposed to borrowing. When you do that, you only need a majority of votes to approve that motion. And another vote was taken. The motion for taking money from free cash passed, but it only passed by 1 or 2 votes, as I remember. It was an incredibly close vote, which in my mind brings up the question, is it really the will of the people to demolish this building. And I almost wonder whether if this issue went to a townwide referendum, whether in fact the community itself at large would vote to take this building down. So I'm not quite sure that it is the will of the people of this community to take this building down. It may be the will of some facets of this community to take it down, but I'm not so sure it's the will of the entire community. And if I could have just one more minute or so. I did a little bit more research on historical buildings and the National Register of Historical Places. And in Massachusetts, there are 185 school buildings, 185 school buildings that are currently on the National Register of Historical Places. They're not in a historic district. The building itself is a historical building and is now in the National Register. So what that means is that there's 185 communities across the state that have somehow decided to preserve a school, many of which are of the same vintage as the center school, for the betterment of the community and through some sort of additional reuse. And so I just wanted to point that out. I did notice that one of these schools happens to be the Athol High School, built in 1915, very similar neoclassical revival architecture as our building, and has now been repurposed and is being utilized as housing for the elderly. So, I mean, there are solutions out there, and I guess what I would like to do is to suggest to the Historical Commission that we do take 12 months. We allow the HRA, the Hatfield Redevelopment Authority, or any other committee that wants to form to seek some solutions to see whether or not it is viable to preserve this building, financially viable.
Yes.
Yeah, John Ziminsky. I live at Woodridge Circle. I've been a Hatfield resident almost 20 years, building contractor for most of my adult life. Actually going to be 42 years in business in November. There's a lot of old buildings around that, you know, maybe they should be taken down. Everybody watches the news in the evening, and looking at the Capitol building with scaffolding, maybe they should just taken the building down, you know? There's a typical example of a repurposed school in Springfield, classical, turned into beautiful condos. I have a friend that lives there, and it's an amazing building. Recently, I had friends from South Carolina come up, Buford, real Southern boy, and Ray is from Fall River, Mass. And they saw the newspaper, and they saw the picture of the school. And I said, yeah, they're taking it down. And Buford said, typical you Yankees, destroy everything, you know? But, you know, he's from the South. He is a historian. He is a tour guide in Charleston. He also does Civil War enactments for the South. Loves the Confederate flag. And he has a lot of great friends that are, you know, African Americans, blacks, whatever. He could not believe why destroy something like that, you know, and once it's gone, it's gone. And you cannot reproduce a building like that today, and it can be fixed. The firehouse in Northampton, they condemned that years ago. And it's basically a renovated building, and it can be done, especially if it doesn't cost the town any money. And we all know about we're looming on the $20 trillion debt in this country. We really need to stop spending money and let somebody else do it and put it on the tax maps. So, thank you.
Angie DAmato, 154 Main Street. I'll be brief. I'm a newbie in town, only 7 years, and just coming here, I was introduced, a friend of ours lived here, and My husband and I used to walk up and down Main Street and through North Street and up and down the streets, and when we visited. And we decided, after living all of our lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to relocate here for the rest of our lives. And this town has soul. And we felt it when we walked up and down the streets. And there's something about a city or a town that sells you. And when you drive down this Main Street, there's something that gets you. And anytime, we have a business here now, and anybody that comes to our business says, boy, that Main Street is beautiful. What an entry. And why would you lose your moneymaker? Why would you want to lose the thing that is the number one thing that draws people to the town? This is your number one, our number one beautiful selling point. And I think that we should preserve it at any cost.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. Anybody else want to speak? Yeah.
I'll just speak one more time, I'm sorry.
There's somebody,
Not to
actually,
be a
somebody,
bloviar, but
somebody
like-
else was interested in speaking. and
Okay.
You should
well,
speak.
Really quickly,
Uh-huh.
like, there can be an artist community in that building. There are a million things you can do with that building. So like, to just close our minds to shutting it down is absurd to me. It's wildly absurd. There's so much that can be done. Sorry.
Okay.
John McKenna, North Street, also in the building trades, specifically historic restoration. I'm new in town, 10 years, and when I first drove down Main Street, the center school was one of the first buildings I noticed, and I really did appreciate. And for a lot of the reasons reiterated, here tonight, I think it would be a real loss to the town to lose that. And since I've been here, I've gotten to know some people who've been here a long time, and they said there used to be a strip. There used to be a sporting goods store, barber shop, a pharmacy burned down. And they've all said that, we really don't have the community we used to have since then. And, it's nice to see that the market got revived and is beginning to get revitalized, and it's nice to see the kids playing basketball. And I seem to see things coming back again, and I just would really hate to see us step in the wrong direction. It's a gorgeous building, and it's one of the things that drew me to this town. That's it, thanks.
Sure.
Angie DAmato from Main Street. And I thought it was interesting because we went to our first meeting last time, and I thought it was interesting at the meeting that it was kind of implied that nobody was really interested in buying the building or in looking at the building. And I think that it seems like a lot of people, when I was talking to people in the audience, that's why they were voting that way, because they said there was no interest in the building. And then there was a gentleman that came up and said that he was interested in buying the building. And that's when the whole vote changed, that there was interest. So I don't know what the whole story is, because we are new here, but there's obviously interest in the building by other people in buying it. And to not pursue that seems really stupid because of everything that's been said tonight. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else out there want to speak? Wait a minute, there's somebody coming up.
Betsy Speeder, 52 King Street. And I don't have a lot to add tonight, but from what I hear, there's just been so much fear-mongering going on. People keep saying, oh, there's all this asbestos, and it's going to cost us so much money if we keep it. And yet, at the town meeting, it seemed that that cost would be assumed by the developers, and there were at least two that spoke up and said that they were still interested in the building, and that would put the building back on the tax rolls in whatever way. I think it's at a minimum to postpone it for a year, with it now being on the front, the front table. I know that when they tore the other school down, which my older daughter, who's now 50, if I can believe that, attended, and then all of a sudden, it was torn down. I mean, there was no vote, there was no notice. It was just all of a sudden, there's big equipment in there tearing down that building. I was horrified. In fact, I think I still feel angry about it. And how many years ago was that? So I certainly, I just see it as a no-brainer that this building would be preserved, and I hope that you'll vote accordingly. Thanks.
Okay, Peter.
So I am Peter Dinoco Sr., and that was my son who was interested, and I believe still is. We have preserved many buildings in the area. We've won multiple historic preservation awards, and we're going to give it another shot if we have the opportunity. But there are huge, huge obstacles to overcome. Yet the building certainly can be saved. There's no question about it in my mind. It's just the cost and the land behind it and all the different considerations, the parking, the asbestos and the lead and those types of things are, for those of us who worked in old buildings all our lives, are not really an issue. It's not I don't understand why the town would spend $500,000 to tear that building down when you have people who have demonstrated their interest. So all I can say is that our family is going to do its best to take another shot at the building if it's available. If it's not, we hope that somebody else will do it. We hope that it just stays. Because there shouldn't be another hole in the center of this town. And it's just, it's all about the lack of maintenance. There's a bigger issue that goes on here. You know, if you look, the entrance to this town hall, the building we're standing in, you look at the lead falling off of it, right in the as you enter, and it needs to be addressed. You know, 10 years ago, I think we were high bidder, or tied for high bid. We weren't even notified that we weren't accepted. I don't know what happened to the person who was accepted. I don't know why the town didn't sell it to them. I wish somebody could explain that to me.
It got voted down in town meeting.
Town meeting,
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, I guess I've said my piece. You know how I feel. If you can see the work we've done on our home, those of you who have been here a while saw it was a mess when we bought it. And then I think it's called the parsonage. We bought from the Congregational Church, and you can see what my son has done to that. So our everything that we've done is right out there for everyone to look at. And that's what we'd like to do here. So.
Anybody else want to speak? We're here to listen if you have anything to say. No? If not, I'll ask if any members of the commission have anything they want to say.
I do.
Okay.
Peter, I'm very interested because obviously in the past 7 years, nobody has really submitted a proposal as I understand it. And I think, anyway, so I think, if we're going to save the school, it's very important that someone like you steps up with a redevelopment plan. The history of this issue is there have been many votes, many people have been to all of them, and it's been, I think, a disagreement over people who don't want to see the school go out of town hands. They have voted down proposals that have come up, and unfortunately, I think it's just too expensive for the town to do anything with. Again, if we're going to save it, and Chris, you said the Redevelopment Authority has an interest and will facilitate this. I mean, it's going to take a lot of work. We need a proposal, and we need to make sure that it is a proposal that town meeting will accept. And if we're talking about forming a committee, your job would be to go out, make this public, get people to come to town meeting. You know, we need to publicize whatever the proposal is. Shouldn't say we, but it is an issue. The town has voted many times, and I don't want to see the school go down personally, but it needs to be resolved somehow. Yeah.
I
Peter?
can say this, that if we were to just take, if I was to be given an opportunity, if we can figure a way to make it work financially, because if it doesn't work financially, it just doesn't work. You give me 2 weeks on the front of that building, and everybody here would be proud of it. It would be beautiful. You know, it's not that far gone. I've read that report and scratched my head. I don't understand how they come up with it. I don't understand how the consultants, and they're certainly a lot smarter than me, but I don't understand how a slate roof that should last 150 years and is 100 years old doesn't have another 50 years in it. I don't understand those things. I don't understand. For instance, one big problem we're going to have is how to heat that building. That is going to be a huge problem to overcome, and one of the ones that we spend a lot of time as a family. You know, but with the moratorium on gas, what do you do with it? But it can be saved, and I'm sure that there will be, given that year and the interest that there is out there, I think somebody will come up with an idea.
My question to you, I mean, do you think the town has definitely said they want to keep the fields in back? They're not going to part with that. Do you think you can make it financially feasible without that land, without adding additional buildings? Because I think that's a real issue for town. They don't want to see additional buildings on that property.
I can say the Dinoco family has only interest in the building.
Okay.
We have no interest whatsoever in building anything else. That's all. However, when it comes to the zoning regulations and parking regulations in town, there's going to have to be how many, for instance, if our interest would probably be in housing, how many parking spaces are we going to need? If you were to buy or rent an apartment from us, would you expect to have a space to come home to? Would you expect, if you had visitors, that they would have a space to come and visit you in? I believe that that's going to mean, for any developer, that some part of that school, the backyard, is going to have to be parking. It's going to have to be extended, or I don't think it'll work. I think it will be minimal, but I don't believe it's unrealistic to think that it won't have to go. And I'm talking somewhere, and I'm talking off the top of my hat because I don't know the regulations yet for parking or visitor parking. I'm thinking somewhere along the backstop with the trees going through it. That obviously is not used, but not much of that, not much of it at all.
Have you looked at, I was looking in the center school building, the planning project, and I think they set out the specifications of, you know, what land is actually available with the school, and I don't know if you've probably looked at this.
I have a copy of that.
Yeah, and, you know, again, the parking would need to fit in that area because the town has again and again said they don't want to part with more land than that. I think.
Well, that may or may not be feasible.
Yeah.
On-street parking is always a possibility, but for a person who has developed property in other towns that had on-street parking, and then the town decided to take away the on-street
So I
parking.
don't think the town would like that a whole lot either,
You
unfortunately, yeah.
You have to think about that as a possibility that there wouldn't be parking. It doesn't mean that it has to stay.
Okay,
If I can make just some points here.
yeah.
Thank
I would like to hear from you, especially about what the Redevelopment Authority feels like it can do to facilitate this process.
I think what we, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, one.
Okay.
Two, in 2008, we had an RFP. There were maps about the parking. Everything was figured out, just how much land was going to go with it. This is one of 3 bids. Mr. Dinoco did not submit a full plan, but he had ideas. Geordie Harold was the winner.
I remember that.
Okay, he was going to put in 4 luxury units. He was going to meet all the zoning requirements. At town meeting, Article 25 was to use that same RFP, the 2008 RFP. The work has been done. We've got tens of thousands of dollars in studies. We don't have to spend nickel one. The HRA can basically take everything that is already, that plan you have there, plans like this, there's boxes of this stuff. We can sit down, sort it, RFP it again. Mr. Dinoco comes, Geordie can come back, Mr. Major can come back, Mr. Gurjen can come. It can be an open door. I'd like to be able to come with 3 proposals at annual and see which one the town likes. Okay?
The problem, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this, and the problem I'm having is, on this, since 2008, there seemed to be a cloak and dagger thing going on. I mean, people come up with a proposal, put it in, it's like going to the car wash. It doesn't come clean. And I'm saying, they've had Mr. Dinoco, and you just mentioned the bidding, the people who came in with proposals of it, it's all in black and white. But yet, we're looking at a building, they want to destroy it. I'm sorry. Doesn't make sense to me. I want to see it stay.
I think the difference now, I think the difference now in 2015 is that we have a quasi-public, economic development-oriented redevelopment authority in place. That entity was never approached, nor was it used to assist in facilitating the pursuit of preserving that building in a viable way, either by leasing it or by selling it or whatever. And so I think that's the big difference now. And I think that's what the Historical Commission has got to keep in mind, is that if we can now turn this project over to an entity in town that's got borrowing capabilities, it's got other authorities that they're separate from the community, from the town itself. It does not report to the Board of Selectmen. It's independent, by the way, although wants to work hand in hand with the Board of Selectmen and would have to, obviously, if any of the proposals that it comes up with need to go to town meeting for a vote. But nevertheless, they are independent of the Board of Selectmen. So I think that, that's what's different now. And I think it would behoove the community, and especially the commission, to postpone this demolition for 12 months. And let's take that time, allow the HRA to go through due diligence, go through its process, and see what happens. And if at the end of 12 months, the town decides to turn down any of the proposals that it comes up with, well, then the building comes down. But I think we owe it to ourselves to go through this process one more time in the next 12 months.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission want to speak? No? I will speak at this point. I'm probably going to vote in favor of this. I will vote in favor of this to impose a demolition delay, but I don't do it with much hope that this is going to be successful, largely because of the history of this town's inability to come up with something on which we can agree, where you get the agreement of the selectmen and the town meeting. I've watched, to my knowledge, at least 4, and there probably are more that I don't know about, but I know of 4 proposals that seemed decent to me that were ultimately passed down, were defeated by either the Board of Selectmen or the town meeting. Various issues at different times. And the town's been arguing about this for a long time. Some of us know that this has been going on for more than 30 years, and it's been heated in particular for the last 10 years or so. And there have been many votes and many discussions, and some of them quite rancorous at town meetings. And I don't want that to continue more than is necessary. But I'm willing to put up with that for one more year in the hopes that we can actually pull it off this time. I'd like to see the building preserved. I would like to see the building put to another use. I believe in that for reasons having to do with historical preservation. I believe in it for reasons much like some of you have expressed in terms of maintaining the sense of what this community is and what the Main Street looks like. But I also believe in it for reasons having to do with green construction. I believe it's better to reconstruct and reuse existing buildings than to build new. And for all of those reasons, I am going to vote in favor of imposing a one-year delay. But I do so fearing to some extent that this is just simply going to carry on the aggravation for one more year, and it's not going to succeed. I'm hoping the town proves me wrong. And I ask that some of you who've spoken so passionately and intelligently in favor of a demolition delay get behind efforts to try to come up with a proposal. Not only come up with a proposal, but come up with a proposal that can get the backing of both the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting. That's not a minor point.
Yeah.
I've seen great proposals passed on. I don't mean passed, accepted, passed on by the Board of Selectmen or the town meeting. I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time.
I have to say, ditto, that is my feeling also, and I think, people are very passionate. You really have a job ahead of you. I mean, it's going to be more than putting up signs. A proposal that people can agree on is the...
And the kicker of all of this is, if we do vote in favor of the motion, and we do have a one-year demolition delay, what that means is, if we don't succeed in putting together something acceptable to the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting, that means definitely the building will come down next fall. Okay? It's not like we're going to have another meeting like this. This is it. This is the last one.
And
Okay?
it may well cost more at that point. It's going to be ugly.
But the thing is, we're giving you people, I feel as a board member, we're giving you people a chance, a real chance. You take your best shot, really, because I've sat here and listened, and I'm saying to myself, they're right. They're right. Well, take advantage of the situation, really. I appreciate it.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. So, on the motion, Key, you've got a copy of it. Could you just reread it? Or you could hand it to me, I can reread it. Doesn't make any difference to me. I may be the only person able to read my own handwriting. I move that the former center school be, in quotes, preferably preserved, close quotes, and that the building commissioner not issue a demolition permit for the center school until 1 year from this date, in accordance with Hatfield Bylaws, Article 13, Section 3. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion is passed. And so we are imposing, as of today, which is the 1st of July, a 1-year demolition delay on the granting of a demolition permit. And I think the building commissioner is in the back of the room. So he's heard it from me, and he'll get it in an email from me tomorrow morning. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.